Welcome back to Questions for the Rector. I'm Stephen Heiner, and with me is the Rector of Most Holy Trinity Seminary here in Reading, Pennsylvania, His Excellency Bishop Donald Sanborn. Hello, Your Excellency.
Hello, Stephen.
So, before today's episode, you said that you wanted to speak about the imperfect church as an idea. What do you mean when you say that?
Well, I'm just seeing that that the way in which Catholics, and by that I mean Catholics who really believe, traditional Catholics will say, are approaching the problem in the church is that they watch a horror show in the Vatican, practically almost, every week there's something horrible coming out, or bishops or some prelates doing something or thinking something or saying something horrible. And then you get these commentators who are saying, this is horrible, horrible, horrible. And that this the new norm, and I'm saying, no, it isn't. The church is the immaculate spouse of Christ. And although church men may sin, yes, and not everyone's perfect in the church, yes, but everything that is official about the church, its rites, its doctrines, its practices, etc., are all perfectly good and necessary to follow, and you can always have a clear conscience about following the church. That's Catholicism. I will be with you all days, even to the consummation of the world. It has the assistance of the Holy Ghost in all of those essential aspects. No matter if the Pope is a saint or a sinner, it has all of those essential aspects and always did. That's Catholicism. I don't like to use the term, but it's sort of like harlot Catholicism now. In other words, there is this terrible church that is doing these awful things, but we just are aware of them and we're doing whatever we need to do to try to put up with it.
And we get these laymen on YouTube trying to explain things to us.
Right. And one of them, I saw the other day, it was Dr. Marshall, for whom I have a great respect. And he was asking J.D. Vance, who had become a Catholic, what he thought about, the problems in the church. And J.D. Vance was saying, well, we don't love our relatives because they're perfect, but because they're good. And he elaborated on that. And Dr. Marshall is nodding that, this is.
What a great idea.
But the Catholic Church is perfect. And that's why we love it. And that's perfect in the way I said, not perfect in its people that are in it, but by all of its doctrines, practices, and liturgy, it's all perfect and must always be perfect. And we cannot accept a good church, and we really don't even have that right now. If you're seeing all of this Vatican II stuff as Catholicism. If you're seeing that as Catholicism, fiducia, supplicans, and all of these other horrible things, that is a defected church. But it seems as though, and I think all of these commentators mean well. Again, I'm not trying to run them down. It's just that is not the approach. The approach is to get rid of these people that are ruining Catholicism. They have to be expelled from the Catholic Church, and the only way you're going to do that is by having a true pope. There is no hope of a successor right now of Francis that is going to be any good. And I think that those bishops that are reacting, like Archbishop Vigano, to his great credit, need to say that the see is vacant, and we who remain faithful to the Catholic Church and Catholic faith, we must do something to give us a true pope. I think that's what needs to be done. Not just complaining and complaining and complaining, and then tomorrow is another day.
Right. I think you said you gave me a quote from Bishop Strickland about.
Yes, I saw in the that he said the bishops should be saying that Francis is not preaching the Catholic faith. If Francis is not preaching the Catholic faith, he is not the Pope. It's
I told you the old trick that Father Cicada gave me was substitute Vicar of Jesus Christ on earth for Pope Francis. So you're saying that the Vicar of Jesus Christ on earth is not preaching the Catholic faith?
Right. That's the and Cardinal Biot very correctly says that he is the living rule of faith. just like a ruler, you judge what a foot is or a meter just by that. That's it.
Peter has spoken through Leo.
Yes, he's the living rule of faith. I always compare it to a hub of a wheel that's made out of jelly. I mean, the wheel falls apart if he is not hard and strong in the faith. And this. But this is the new norm now. This is, we wring our hands and, this is really bad, how horrible it is. And then you see the comments, it's really, really horrible. And everything's terrible and horrible. This is not Catholicism.
But as you know, Yorksley, this is something we've observed over the years, in other ventures. And here, when we look at the seminary channel, when you're blasting away, let's say you have an episode on Fiducia Supplicans or Amoris Laetitia, tens of thousands of views.
Yes.
But let's say a Cardinal Bio book,
yes,
people are not so interested. And I think it needs to be driven home more than once that watching the antics of Francis is not a substitute for the spiritual life, and does not count as Catholicism. The fact that you know what Francis did this week does not make you a Catholic.
No.
And you're saying that we should not habituate ourselves to this
imperfect church attitude. In other words, that this is we love our relatives not because they're perfect, but because they're good. No, we love our church because it is perfect. You see, and in all of its essential qualities, it is perfect. It is the immaculate spouse of Christ and must always be considered that way.
So what would you tell our watchers and listeners who are used to watching, let's say, some of these personalities, and they really get a lot of enjoyment out of it? They feel like they're very informed. Should they continue doing that?
Well, yes, but in the proper context. In other words, to be informed is good, and it reinforces, your reasons for resisting, etc. But they cannot see this as the new norm, that this is the way Catholicism is going to proceed until the end of the world. They have to see that the defection of the faith in these men that claim to be popes disqualifies them from being popes, and particularly imposition of their defection of the faith upon the church. It'd be one thing if bad enough, if they defected themselves personally, but imposing this modernism, which St. Pius X said is the worst heresy ever to afflict the church, imposing modernism upon the church disqualifies them as having authority. Authority by its very nature has as its end, its purpose, the common good of any society over which it is placed. And so if you do not intend the common good, you do not have the authority. It disappears. Just like somebody, I always use the example of that pilot a number of years ago, who had a fight with his girlfriend and decided that he was going to crash the plane into a mountain in France and everybody had to die because he was upset that day. Now, did he have the authority? And if the airline knew that he was going to do that, would they have permitted him to pilot that plane? Of course not. They would say, get out of here. You see, because they would understand that principle that if you intend an evil end, you no longer can exercise any authority. You don't have the authority, because there is a very, very close relationship between authority and the common. It's an essential relationship in the common good. See, so I always cite that as always the transportation. But it's a very good example. This makes it a valid
Bishop Sanborn video.
Yes,
now.
Yes, because it's a transportation analogy. But it's a very good one. In other words, it's very clear to understand that if the airline knew that he was going to do that, they would have stripped him of his ability to have that plane. Or a captain of a ship who says, I'm going to wreck this ship on the rocks. They would tie him up and put him in the brig. Without any question at all. They would just get out of here, because you lose everything if you don't intend that common good.
And I suppose part of it, you always talk, and going back to transportation, you talk about this as a journey, and I'm thinking of train stops. And suppose early on in the journey, there's a little bit of, and I'm just recalling myself, there's a little bit of anger when we come over from the Novus Ordo because we feel we were lied to, and we're looking for instances in which to sort of build up that anger. And I think over time, that has to be moved away from, and your thoughts take on the color of what you're spending your time on. And so if you're watching a lot of it, you referenced Dr. Marshall, if you're watching a lot of Taylor Marshall videos and getting very agitated, maybe substitute 2 or 3 of those. We have the sermons on Roman Catholic media. Watch church history. You're in the middle of a church history class now that's being streamed out. So maybe substitute 1 out of every 3, 2 out of every 3 of those agitation videos, which isn't going to help your spiritual life, with something that could possibly do that. And
Yes.
you won't find yourself potentially despairing, because I think that's where that could end, Your Excellency, is people just give up. They see so much of this nonsense, and it could take them over the edge.
Yes, for the week, but but typically people love what we call red meat sermons. That's where you blast the Novus Ordo, and if you were to talk about the virtues of Saint Rose of Lima or something like that, they would be less interested.
Or asleep, maybe.
Yeah, yes, so. But that's human nature a little bit. But yes, they have to stay informed about the Novus Ordo and understand why they are doing what they're doing. But at the same time, they have to continue with their true Catholicism, which involves holiness and progress in virtue.
And I suppose the way I'd close that, Your Excellency, is you started with that idea of that J.D. Vance idea that it really takes eyes of faith to see beyond what is going on in the church now, and to see that perfect church, and to see that spotless bride of Christ.
Yes.
And that's what we should, I suppose, calibrate our eyes, our spiritual eyes, to be looking at that and contemplating that, rather than to be distracted with the horror show around.
Yes.
Well, as always, Joyce, thank you for bringing up this topic, and thank you for discussing it with our audience. If you enjoyed this and you'd like to share this with someone who maybe watches a few too many of those red meat videos, feel free to hit the share button, like, subscribe, send a super thanks. There's also ways to donate in the description. As always, Your Excellency, thank you for your time.
All right, no problem. Thank you.